Hello everyone, today we are with Frost Giant, we are with Tim Campbell and Tim Morten from the team, and we will do an interview with them. Guys, can you introduce yourself maybe, and introduce the studio, Frost Giant Studio?
All right, I'll go first, I guess. I am Tim Morten, and I am working on the production side at Frost Giant. I used to be the production director for StarCraft 2.
Yeah.
My name is Tim Campbell. I'm the game director on our project. Most recently, I was the game director on Wasteland 3 in Exile. And earlier than that, I was the lead campaign designer on Warcraft 3 and the Frozen Throne.
Can you talk a bit about Frost Giant and why this studio has been made?
Sure thing. Frost Giant really was born out of the team's mutual love for real-time strategy as a genre. And it's an opportunity for us to work together to try to build the next great RTS independently.
Just to add on, the entire team at Frost Giant is composed of veterans of RTS development and people who are have grown up as players of this and are just massive fans. So this entire studio and the project and the team are all spawned out of a love for RTS gameplay, and so this is this is something that is a passion project for all of us.
Okay, and how big is the team at the moment?
We have got just 10 full-time right now, and then we've got another 5 contract working with us, so about 15 overall.
15, okay. Can you talk a bit about new members of the team that you have announced recently?
Sure. So James Anhalt has just joined Frost Giant this year. James was a lead engineer on StarCraft 2. And has spent many years at Blizzard, not just on StarCraft, but working on many different games and core technology there. We're really excited to have James join the team because he has such deep experience specifically building the underlying technologies that made StarCraft 2 feel so responsive as a game. And that's bringing a lot of value to us as we set off to build a whole new architecture for real-time strategy.
Okay, and with this news, we saw that you recently talked about a big fundraise, and who are the new investors in Frost Giant, and what does it mean for Frost Giant?
Yeah, we're extremely happy to have gotten some additional funding since our seed round that we announced last October. This new funding brings 4 new investors into Frost Giant. The first is Kona Venture Partners, which is a Korean fund, and they've been involved in funding games in Korea. They're now starting to get involved in games outside Korea, and we're obviously very grateful to have a partner in that region since real-time strategy has such a legacy in Korea specifically. The second is Global Founders Capital, or GFC. GFC is a global fund that does more than just games. They are a very large fund, and that is helpful for us just in terms of their connections throughout the world and also the potential for them to continue to be a partner for us as we grow the company. Jared Smith, who is just a passionate RTS fan who also happens to have founded the nutrition bar company called RX Bar, and those are fantastic. If you haven't tried them, we got to get a box as a team and enjoy them. But anyhow, he's just a super passionate real-time strategy fan and is involved now as an investor. And last but not least is Eden Chen, who is a back-end game entrepreneur himself at Pragma Platform, building out game technologies for networking, and he's also directly invested in us. So super excited to have that group of people involved in the company and to have the additional funding that gives us more runway and more opportunity to grow the company.
Yeah, of course. About Frost Giant, I have another questions. You worked on Warcraft 3 and StarCraft 2. Some members of the team actually worked on this game, which are some of the most successful RTS on the last 20 years. Do you have things that you learned from these games that you want to keep, and some other things that you want to change on the RTS that you work on?
Yeah, I can go first on this one. I feel hugely grateful and fortunate to have had the chance to work on Warcraft 3 and the Frozen Throne, and earlier to work on the Command and Conquer franchise. And I know Tim and the rest of the team each have their own experiences on big RTSs and are equally thankful for that. So our learnings and our experiences on those other franchises have definitely influenced how we're approaching building RTSs. For me personally, they've really reinforced the importance of asymmetry in how we design our factions and our gameplay. They've reinforced the need for really smooth and fluid, responsive controls, and to have gameplay that is both easy to step into to control, but that also has a lot of nuances in it for players to master over time. And so there's definitely a lot of best practices and lessons around how to develop RTSs that is ingrained in us for sure. And we're looking to take those lessons and those experiences and then to build upon it with even new ideas to build something that's that really is a big step forward for the genre.
So maybe we can talk a bit about RTS in general, not only about Frost Giant and your vision about this. So RTS tends to be really unpopular nowadays, I think, and many of the community thinks about this. It looks like, that it has been replaced by MOBA or Battle Royale based on popularity. Team games seems to be more attractive, and what is your feeling about this? How do you see that?
I guess I'll start this one off and maybe pass it over to Tim, but I'm going to just react to the first part about the perception that RTS games are not popular. One of the benefits of having worked at Blizzard was the opportunity to see the back-end player numbers. And the reality is that RTS games have been consistently popular since the launch of StarCraft 2, and of course the prior data from StarCraft 1 was similarly good. But the point here is that the popularity really is not declining. What's happened is that other genres have appeared as trends, and that's been true for MOBAs, it's been true for Battle Royale. We see this happening now with Survival and Valheim. Like there are all these trends that happen in gaming that get a lot of attention. And we love all of those other kinds of games as well, but I think it's a misperception that RTS is actually losing players to those genres, because the truth is that the audience for real-time strategy is quite stable. But I'll pass it over to Tim to talk a little bit about the team part of that question.
Yeah, I would say that team play is an area that we're very interested in exploring. It's something that is on our radar, and we're definitely looking at and talking about what would be interesting to do there. Team play has been a part of the RTS genre for a long time now, both in terms of you looking at 2v2 or other types of competitive play, or you also can look at StarCraft 2's co-op commanders as a way of getting teams into the mix. And we're not looking to copy one specific model that any other game has done. We're looking at teams as an opportunity because we think that there's something neat that could be done there that could also help broaden the appeal, which is a big part of our goal for building this game. Is we want to really stay true to what makes core RTS great, but we also want to really open the floodgates to a larger user base who can come in and strengthen the genre for everybody involved with it. And team play, I think, is one of the ways that we're going to be able to do that.
Another question, which is a bit similar to this, RTS are mainly 1 versus 1 games, so against the computer, for example in the solo campaign, or online against other players in 1 versus 1, except maybe in Warcraft 3, which was a bit competitive in the 2 versus 2, from what I remember. What is your focus on that? Do you want to do mainly 1 versus 1 game, or something more team oriented, like what you said? And how do you want to split that? Do you want to balance the game to be competitive for team games?
We actually have a topic posted on the Frost Giant subreddit talking about this very question. And I think we are interested to hear what the audience feels the right emphasis for us will be. As Tim mentioned, team games have a lot of potential. I think in StarCraft 2, for example, the emphasis was much more on solo play, whether that's solo play against AI or solo competitive against another player. Even though StarCraft 2 supported team modes, it wasn't as balanced for those team modes. So we do feel like which one we prioritize will have an impact on the quality of the experience. So we want to be conscious in how we proceed there. But we're super interested to hear what the community has to say on this one.
Yeah, that's actually a really big deal for us. So I encourage everyone who is seeing this to please be actively participating in that. We read as many of the responses as we can. We look at all of the discussions that's going on, and it really does play a role in our development and has already impacted in different areas how we're approaching aspects of the game that we're making. And so in this area, we have a topic, teams, that we think that there's a lot of potential in, and it's definitely something that the community has already shared thoughts on. But please, if you're seeing this, like, continue the discussion. Let us know what you think about it.
Yeah, I will put the link in the description of the video. If you want to give your feedback, go and just post your feedback. So let's go for another questions. Many players think that RTS are too hard, really too hard. It's clear that the barrier for new players is very huge. Do you think that it's possible to do a game that is beginners friendly? Yes. Do you think that it's possible?
So I'd like to lead off on this one, and then I can pass it over to Tim. We're not looking to make a beginner-friendly RTS specifically. We don't think that the RTS genre is broken or flawed in any way or needs a radical reinvention. We want to make a game that appeals to players of all skill levels for RTS. And that is as much focused on professional players and high-end competitive players as it is a completely new player who hasn't played RTS before. So we're not setting out to make a beginner-friendly RTS as much as we are setting out to make a RTS that can really broaden the market. And there are a lot of ideas that we have about how to do that. We've also had a lot of great suggestions from the community about how to do that. And so we're looking at key areas such as onboarding and how we ramp new players in, how we pace the experience and the addition of complexity. And we have a lot of different ideas on the UI and on the gameplay side that we're going to be prototyping through. And our goal is to preserve the great depth and even complexity that RTS games have. But easing players in, easing the skill growth of players who play this game a little bit and how they can improve over time, and then finding ways to allow players to opt into that complexity and that depth as they get more and more comfortable with the game.
So it's maybe more about learning them how to play. It's more about this. It's more like this for you.
Yes, that's a big part, but it's also approaching gameplay from the perspective of not being afraid of depth and not being afraid of complexity, allowing that to be there, but presenting it in a way that can allow players to opt into it from moment to moment. As they get more and more comfortable with the game, they can maybe start mastering different aspects of the game and being able to really explore some of the systems and the mechanisms that may have escaped them when they were a brand new user, but that allow for them to have more nuanced play.
Okay, I see. I totally see. So I have really precise questions about the game. So for you, what is the ideal length of a multiplayer games and why? I ask these questions because with StarCraft 2, we saw maybe in I don't remember the year, but before Legacy of the Void, I think it's before Legacy of the Void, we played on 6 workers, and then we switched to 12 workers to make the game faster, mainly. It's one of the reasons to make the game faster, to have action faster. And what is your feeling about this, and how long should be a game in an RTS?
This is one of those areas where we value feedback highly. definitely for Legacy of the Void, the feedback that we got around optimizing out some of the more repetitive beginning portions of the game was positive. I think people felt like there was so little variety in what happens in those early moves. Largely, people are building workers that starting with more workers just took something away that wasn't really missed. And certainly there are some other dissenting viewpoints on that, but by and large, I think the feedback that we got was favorable. And what that meant to multiplayer match lengths was that the average game match lands more in the 20 to 30 minutes range, whereas previously it was at least 10 minutes longer than that. That helped from an esports planning perspective. It helped from just engagement, that you get into the excitement faster. So we feel like that's probably a pretty good range still, but curious to hear if the community feels differently. And I would observe that even now, cheese still happens. There are short games. Certainly, there are base trade games that go longer, and kind of evenly matched skill games that go much longer. But the average is probably in that 20 to 30 minute sweet spot right now.
Our goal is to basically have the potential for really interesting and dramatic interactions all the way through the game length from beginning to end, and not have a lull where there's no player interaction and then have everything happen within beyond a certain minute point in the timeline. So we're looking at approaching our game in a way of trying to avoid some of those lulls that get boring for viewership, and just get players into conflict earlier and in more interesting ways.
Okay. So let's talk maybe a bit about game mechanics and game design, which is a really, really important part, I think. So based on what already exists, what is the most fun game mechanics that you would want to implement in your RTS? Something maybe special.
Tim, do you want to go first?
I was going to let Tim take this. So I think we are very much setting out to be a game that Blizzard RTS players will be comfortable playing. And what that means is that we believe the mechanics of Blizzard games are fun, and we want to continue with those base mechanics. There's a pretty big difference, even across Blizzard games, between Brood War, Warcraft 3, StarCraft 2. So just in saying that we're going to stay true to Blizzard mechanics isn't really throwing down a specific, we're going to do X or we're going to do Y. I think within that range, we probably wind up somewhere between Warcraft 3 and StarCraft 2. Like, we have influences of both those games on our team. But we're on an exploration right now where we're trying things out and we're coming up with ideas to see what actually will be fun in our prototype. So I don't think we're at a point where we're committing to a specific, like, we think a particular mechanic is the right mechanic for us to focus on yet. We kind of want to try some things and see where that goes. But I don't know if Tim, if you want to add to that.
Yeah, no, that was a great way of summing it up. We have a lot of ideas at this point, but like Tim is saying, we need to try them out, find the fun, and then we'll double down on that. And a lot of times when we identify one fun thing, it really focuses our attention in that spot, and it leads to maybe some other secondary features that we wouldn't have otherwise considered if that first feature wasn't fun. So there's definitely an organic element to development that we have to just follow and see where it pans out. But there are a couple of areas that I know that are important for us to push on. One is on the map making side and being able to really support user generated content. That's something that's very important to us. I've spent the first half of my career as a designer using tools to make maps and on multiple RTSs, and there's a joy that comes from being able to make and share content. Like, it should be fun, it should be easy, it should be easy to share that content and have your friends play it, and we really want to facilitate that as much as possible. So that's an area that we're already looking at, even though we're early in development. And second is asymmetry. I mentioned that earlier, but that is really, really important to us. We're huge fans of asymmetry. We've gotten lots of great input from the community about asymmetry, and I think it's a front that we can push on pretty significantly. StarCraft and Warcraft, even between them, had very different approaches to asymmetry, with StarCraft having higher unit asymmetry in the design of the units and their abilities and how they function between the races, and Warcraft having stronger harvesting and mining and asymmetry in that aspect of the game. And we're looking to kind of take some notes from both of them and then add some new ideas, and then really put a lot of effort into strong asymmetry between each of the races, and hopefully that'll lead to some really interesting and fun gameplay.
Let's go to the next question. In your opinion, what is the least exploited game mechanics that can make RTS more attractive for new players?
For us, we feel like there's a huge opportunity in onboarding. So Tim talked earlier about how we're really not trying to make a simplified RTS. That's not our goal. We are still embracing that RTS has a lot of depth to it. But I think the area where shortcuts have been taken before is related to onboarding new players into the game. And Tim actually made the observation in a team meeting that we had recently that on every other game he's worked on, and this is true for me as well, the tutorial, like the player onboarding part of the game development, happens at the very end when we have the least amount of time and the least amount of attention to put towards it. And we are trying to turn that around. We're trying to start with that and really think about how do we make that learning experience for new players coming in great. And I think that is going to be very fruitful. Like, we've got a lot of ideas on how we can make that better without taking anything away from the depth and the rich complexity that RTS is known for.
Recently in the news, I saw that you discuss about the possibility to implement heroes in the game. It is still planned or not?
I wouldn't say heroes specifically. Heroes has a lot of different interpretations, and they're pretty broad definition. But looking at RTSs, you can see everything from Command and Conquer Generals, where there's disembodied leaders who provide different benefits, all the way to Warcraft 3's heroes and StarCraft 2's co-op commanders. There are a lot of different expressions of special characters, for lack of a better word, that could be in-game, could be out of game, and they're interesting to us. So we are exploring in this direction. I wouldn't say that we are making a hero RTS the way that Warcraft 3 did. And we're also not just going to copy StarCraft 2's co-op commanders. We're not really interested in just redoing a feature the way that those other games have done them. But what we are interested in is exploring this area, finding what's fun, and then coming up with maybe our own way of doing something in the space. So, but in terms of the type of RTS that we're making, we're very much making a RTS that can support high unit counts and can support macro play and can support battles across the map, and not necessarily something that's going to be centralized around smaller unit counts or specific heroes the way that Warcraft 3 is. But I think that there's a spectrum and there's a lot of potential for us to innovate in this area in an interesting way.
Okay. Okay, perfect.
We posted this one as a community topic a couple of months ago as well, and got a really diverse set of opinions back from players. But I think the common thread that we got was that it feels like there's potential to do something beneficial here. And so at the end of that, what we posted back was just that we're going to experiment with heroes, or as Tim has clarified, with leader characters, who are distinguished from the rest of the army in our prototype. And if those experiments show us that that's fun, and that some of the downsides that were talked about in the community feedback can be mitigated, then we'll continue down that path. But it's possible that we find that it doesn't live up to our expectations. So I think we're at a point where we're really intrigued by this idea, and we are going to explore it. But we haven't decided that this is the direction that we're committing to.
Yeah, you already answered a bit about my next questions, which is the game going to be like Warcraft 3 or StarCraft 2 with several races and an asymmetric balance, or more like an Age of Empires with one race but different technologies? My questions is more like, will it be one race with many variations or several races? I know that it will be an asymmetric balance, but what is the goal? Maybe many race or not?
We're definitely going to be doing multiple races with strong asymmetry between them, significant differences from race to race, rather than one race with a bunch of different branches within it. Exactly how many races we haven't determined yet, but what different races allow us to do is it allows us to really radically change the core fundamental mechanics in a way that different branches within one race wouldn't necessarily let us do. We've definitely talked about it and considered it, but for the gameplay that we're after and the really distinct fundamental differences between the play styles of the different races, having different factions with asymmetric gameplay is really what's going to support what we're doing the best. Now, within that, we're experimenting and we're exploring. So we don't know total number. We don't know exactly what the nature of those are yet, but that'll come with time.
I think that it's a good point because two players can have a different play style, a different vision of the game, and I think that having different races is a really, really good point here.
It would be hard to imagine, if StarCraft 2 was built with only Terrans as the race. It'd be hard to imagine a branch of Terrans that could have creep and have that be a mechanic for them, for example. And so once you start going down the road of running really strong fundamental differences between races, it kind of leads you to a place of having them be distinctly different from each other.
Another point about game mechanics, we see that most RTS are either macro-oriented or micro-oriented. So macro-oriented, it can be managing big armies, and micro-oriented, managing few units. What will be the orientation for your RTS? Will it be a mix of or both, or more macro-oriented, maybe? Do you know it?
I think some of that's going to come out from just playing the game as we build it and testing things out. But I think if you used Warcraft 3 as kind of one stake in the ground and StarCraft 2 as another stake in the ground in terms of army size and complexity on the map and things like that, we're going to be in the middle someplace. We want elements definitely of StarCraft 2 in terms of larger unit counts, the ability to fight in different places on the map, the ability to really have the drama of large army versus large army play out in interesting ways. But within that, in the same way that StarCraft 2, games can hinge on micro, right? They can hinge on the strong application of units or abilities in different ways within the context of that large army. And we really want to not lose sight of that. So we're trying to not define our game in terms of macro or micro. There are elements of both that we want. And but I think if you imagine the difference between Warcraft 3 to StarCraft 2, even within the Blizzard family of RTS, there was a really big step that was taken. We're looking to have that next step be what our game represents from StarCraft 2, building on both elements of both games.
Okay, perfect.
I don't know, Tim, was there anything you wanted to add to that?
No, I think that's a great answer. It really, I think even within Blizzard's history of RTS, how much you categorize those games as macro or micro is a little bit of a subjective call, and Tim kind of touched on this. But thinking about the Blizzard tradition of RTS, that's very much the tradition that we're going to try to stick to.
I have another topic, which is the community. So how close do you want to be with the community, and is the community going to have an active voice in the game direction or not?
We have a really active subreddit, and we are so grateful for the engagement that we're already seeing from the community on that subreddit. We try to post regular topics. We started out monthly. I think we're closer to every other month now, just to give us a chance to really digest all of the feedback. But we've started this process substantially earlier than we've ever had it for the games that we worked on at Blizzard. And I guess in a way we worry that by starting so early, people might get impatient for the game because we're literally at the very beginning of our process, but we find so much value and so much broadening of our own thought process by having the community's voice injected into our own process that we're committed to stay with that and to continue doing that throughout our development. We've also been having some behind the scenes feedback sessions with prominent figures in RTS, ranging from Tastosis to Day 9 to Scarlet and other pro players. And we're planning to expand that as well to continue to take lots of points of diverse feedback. We're particularly interested to reach out to Korean players and to other players around the world who we haven't had a chance to connect with yet, but whose appreciation of this genre is so significant and their experience can really help inform the decisions that we make.
I have another question. I play a lot on StarCraft 2, but I play to other games too. And recently I spent quite some time on Escape from Tarkov, which has really interesting features to make new players come. It's Twitch drop. You already use it on StarCraft 2, I think. And do you want to implement this kind of feature to promote the game? Like being more close to the community, maybe to streamers?
We had brainstormed a lot of different ideas about how to give streamers more direct opportunities to interact with the game and to interact with us, even as a development team. And I think facilitating that kind of interaction is super important to the ecosystem. Loot drops for streams is one way to do that, but there are a lot of other ideas that we're exploring as well. So I think that's absolutely a component of what we're thinking about, and we really want to build that in from the get-go for our game.
Okay. It was, yes, an open questions about how to add this kind of things, and you want to add this kind of things. I think that StarCraft 2 was released at a time where Twitch wasn't very, not very implemented at this moment. But I think that today every games should take this point in consideration.
Yeah, totally
I think
agree.
that's a. Sorry, go ahead, Tim.
Oh, I was just going to say, we did do one of the war chests on StarCraft 2 where watching streams related to StarCraft 2 gave you points towards completing the war chest. And so we did a little bit of experimentation back then, but I think there's a lot more that we could do.
Yeah, totally.
This could also be a really interesting topic to open up and get input on about which ways of interacting are appreciated the most and liked the most. Definitely an area that I think aspirationally we want to do something really neat in, but which form and how that expresses itself, I think, is still up for discussion.
Yeah, it's totally not only about streamers, it's about the community, to be honest. So
yeah, agreed.
I have two last questions, which are really, really important. At the moment, how advanced is the development of your game?
I'll start, and maybe Tim can chime in. But a lot of the team just joined Frost Giant at the end of last year, so we're very young as a team. And what that means is that we're in pre-production. We're not even in full production of the game. We are building out the fundamental technologies that will enable us to make a new RTS instead of building the missions and building the races and all of those things that you expect when an RTS hits full production. So it's a very exciting time because we get to experiment and we get to try things and prototype, but it's also a very early time, earlier than I think at least that I'm aware of, any other big RTS has announced that it's happening. So I don't know, Tim, if you want to add to that.
Yeah, this is a double-edged sword for us, for sure, because we are a dedicated independent studio that's small and agile, and we get to take some creative risks, and we get to really push to be innovative in different areas, and we get to maybe tackle some things that wouldn't be possible within established franchises or larger companies. But at the same time, we don't have the advantage of having a mature engine and tool set and pipeline all in place for us. So we have to make all of those things, and that's what we've been working on, is the foundational layers of technology, how we're going to make levels, how we're going to get art assets in, how we're going to build this game and do it in an efficient manner. And at the same time, we have a parallel process going on where we're exploring setting ideas, and we're exploring looks and art styles, and really trying to approach this from both perspectives at the same time, creating a really solid foundation on the creative side and a really solid foundation on the technology side. And what that's going to enable us to do once we complete that process is then merge those two and iterate on gameplay incredibly fast. And that is really where the fun gets identified and the game comes together, and then things start really accelerating at that point.
Okay, I see. And last questions. Do you have a window for the release date? Maybe in terms of year or things like this?
Too soon.
Yeah, too soon.
Yeah, I think realistically, it's going to take us time just to coalesce around the specific design ideas that we want to see in the final game. And so if we throw out a date right now, it'll just be completely wrong. So I guess know that it's early days right now, so it's going to be years, not months, until we're done. But we're definitely on a good trajectory so far. One thing I'll throw out independently, maybe as a separate topic, is just how important the French scene has been for real-time strategy. I think certainly French fans of RTS are hugely passionate. We see O-gaming and nation wars and so much community that's happened around real-time strategy in France. We're really grateful to have a chance to speak to that audience.
Yeah, thank you about this. I will tell them. They will probably watch this video. So I know a bit O-gaming. I'm not part of O-gaming, but I know that they do a lot on the scene.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's because of them that I became a YouTuber and streamer. So yeah, it's a good team and they do a lot of good work, I think.
Yeah.
So do you have maybe a last word to say about the game, about Frost Giant?
I'll jump in. I think the most important thing for us is that we build a game that players enjoy. And this process that we're going through right now to try to get input and ideas from the community is something that's already been incredibly valuable, that we want to make the keystone for how we develop this game moving forward.
Yeah, the community is so important to us, and it's fundamentally important that our game really resonates with the core audience and StarCraft fans and Warcraft fans. So we really just want to continue to encourage responses and talking to us. We will be as open as we can as we're moving through topics and sharing updates about development. It's important to us that we are transparent through that process.
Yeah.
And we really want to hear from you, the players and the community. We want thoughts, ideas, any sort of feedback on where we are in development as we share it. It is really incredibly important, and we have been humbled by the response that has happened ever since we announced the company. And from that point on, it's been phenomenal. And I just want to say thank you to everyone who has given us feedback and who has really just kind of helped carry the ball forward. And I want to encourage more people to continue to do that. We listen to you, and we really value the feedback.
Yeah, so thank you for this interview. To be honest, it's really good to have you for an interview. It was really easy to talk with you. So this is, I think, a really good point for the community and for the game to see that you, Frost Giant, are easy to approach.
Thank you. No, really appreciate it. And thank you for the opportunity to talk about this stuff. It's our favorite subject, so every chance we get is wonderful for us.
Yes, thank you too. This has been a pleasure, and really appreciate the chance to talk with you.
Thank you.